What are your favorite quirks you've given to characters? Leave yours down in the comments below. My Tabaxi barbarian was convinced that the Tooth Fairy brought milk into their magical fridge. She was also afraid of ghosts, because she was once possessed and almost drowned by one, and during an encounter, she opened a door, saw a ghost in the room, proceeded to close said door, and dashed away to hide behind something. At the end of the campaign, she also learned to speak with animals and became the overlord of some chickens by offering them some seeds. My ASMR cleric believes that the party members are her deceased children and treats them as her own, defending them viciously. My Goliath barbarian occasionally thinks he was meant to be a bard, long backstory, but he carries a small lute that belonged to a friend of his. He plays the much too small lute very poorly and sings with the voice of gravel. My Warforged fighter fully believes that he is actually human and doesn't understand why everyone keeps calling him a Warforged. I try to keep the quirks small, things that won't break the character but are at least entertaining. I have a treasured little kenku who can talk entirely normally, having spent his entire childhood following a bard around and learning to say basically anything he would ever need to say in the bard's voice. For the most part, this is a great thing, until he meets other kenku. Then he starts to think he's, in some way, cheating, not a real kenku. They have this huge thing in common, trading words, talking in each other's voices, and finding fascinating and highly individual ways to overcome the problem they share. But he isn't, and he can't really be a part of that. Yes, he can mimic them, borrow their phrases, but they all know he doesn't need to. He's a tourist in his own race, and it makes him feel like a fraud. One of my character's defining childhood memories is always being hungry. Is this Goku? As an adult, he has an unhealthy relationship with food, stockpiling it and often prioritizing food over other loot. Definitely Goku. However, he has a soft spot for hungry kids and will often give away much of his food stockpile to feed them. My half-orc fighter, Haru of Tenmei, is from Curse of Strahd. Before being taken by the Mists, he was a soldier to the Emperor of Kozakura, very formal, bound by tradition, and lawful good. One of his traditions is something I created, the 7 Reverences. Basically, he must bow in multiples of 7 based on the rank of the person he's addressing. Officials, captains, and nobles, 7 bows. Higher nobles, priests, and generals, 14 bows. Daimos, warlords, and shoguns, 21 bows. The emperor themselves, 22 bows. Cut to us dining with Strahd. Naturally, he demands 22 bows. I give him 21. The DM smirked and said, "Strahd will remember this." Oops. What a way to insult someone. It's like, "You're not my emperor, 21 for you." I had a character with -1 charisma, but high wisdom and intelligence. She had the sweetest, softest voice, but she was the most condescending bitch you'd ever meet. Her backstory: she was a cleric chosen for a grand holy mission, to die and give birth to a new star. Her ex convinced her to go through with it, even though it meant a slow, painful death over years in the name of honor and duty. After completing the ritual and transforming into a scourge ASMR, she became bitter as hell, feeling betrayed and used by her own people. She spent the whole campaign looking at her old church like, "I understand your point, but my counterpoint is that y'all fucking suck," said in the sweetest tone imaginable. My College of Spirits bard is a tiefling guitarist who has never lived a moment without seeing and speaking to ghosts. He doesn't censor himself about it, he loves talking to them. The spirits of enemies that he's killed and just random ghosts that he's met will follow him around like invisible will-o-wisps. To most people, he just looks like he's talking to the air. Well, one day he saw a huge, jacked hobgoblin kneeling beside 4 graves. 4 ghosts were trying to comfort him. The first words out of his mouth? "They loved you, you know." Lucky for him, that hobgoblin became a close ally. But honestly, sometimes he's genuinely creepy as hell, and he will never stop doing it. I find that to be quite charming and sweet. My Goliath barbarian always introduces himself by his clan name, then his title, and finally his given name. It took 15 to 20 sessions before someone realized they were calling him by his title, not his first name. Also, he was obsessed with giving out titles. Whenever a party member accomplished something great or had a strong character trait, he gave them a new title. His number 1 contribution to social encounters? Introducing the party. His number 2 contribution? Swinging his greatsword at a lord. Once. My Hexblood Bard is asexual and entirely uninterested in romance. However, as a glamour bard, she recognizes the power of charm and manipulation. Shortly after joining the party, she noticed that one of the other PCs, a sorcerer, had god-awful wisdom. He failed every charm save. Well, one day she tried to convince the party of something, batted her eyelashes at him, and he immediately gave in. She was seriously put off by how easy it was. For the first time in her life, she almost felt guilty. From that moment on, she decided it was poor sport to manipulate him. Unless she needed someone to walk into a dangerous room first, of course. She keeps that trick in her pocket just in case. I played a necromancer who was determined to rehab the image of the undead. She would summon skeletons to do odd jobs around town. After a town was attacked by bandits and the bandits were defeated, she raised their corpses, not for an army, but to help rebuild the town. I guess my ranger avoids iron due to extended stays in the Feywild that changed his mannerisms. He refuses to go into smithies, his armor is made of bone. Whenever the party's artificer, who is covered in iron, hugs him, he loudly protests. I play a tiefling bard whose stage name is Tea Leaves. Aww. He has big frontman energy until combat starts. Then he hides behind his roadies, the party, until the fight is over. My Tabaxi ranger was hyper-fixated on fairytales, but was terrified of pixies. He took every possible protection against them, salt on doors and windows, never giving his true name, etc. It's not that weird in D&D, now that I think about it, but it was hilarious to roleplay. I've played a barbarian with dementia in a couple of one-shots. She was actually a tribute character for a lady who passed in the care home I work in. Aww. I played it so that I rolled for recognition of people that we came across. For example, when a bunch of guards and their captain tried to arrest us, evil one-shot, I rolled that she recognized the captain and went in for a hug. Mechanically, it was a grapple. Good old Barb the Barbarian. My second character ever was a dwarven barbarian who firmly believed that dwarves didn't exist. He was also convinced that bows were inherently magical because you take a big stick with a string and a pointy stick, and suddenly the pointy stick is gone? And the goblin is dead? Sounds like some wizard bullshit to me! I am currently playing a Tabaxi reborn barbarian who has the mandatory intelligence dump stat. They've been back from the grave for about 4 months, lived in a graveyard during that time, and basically lived under a rock before they died. So they have no knowledge of the outside world, its culture, people, etc. Everything they see becomes the norm until they are told otherwise. For example, one of my group members manifested wings as an ASMR, and from my point of view, for several sessions, every human could fly whenever they wanted to. Let's see. My Goliath tiefling monk was terrified of cats. Big cats, house cats, it did not matter. Sparkles, for example, the mayor's lap cat, sent this over 8-foot tall, built like a brick shithouse man running for the hills. My human wizard was blind, but not in the normal sense. He was a time wizard and messed around with spells he shouldn't have, and was stuck seeing everything that had ever happened or would happen. So he wore a veil to keep from going crazy, and saw through the eyes of his familiar when he really needed to. Probably my bladesinger drow's penchant for sensible security slowly descending into paranoid conspiracy theories that may have ultimately been a key factor in the DM's design for the plot. It is important to know that her skills were such that she wasn't particularly well suited to unraveling the mysteries she found herself facing, and so had a lot of cases of being wrong for the right reasons and right for the wrong reasons. After some discussion and making sure the campaign my character is in won't be sparse on any food, I made a homebrew tiny fairy who has the quirk of being basically a shonen protagonist in regards to food. Another Goku here. Like, oh, cool, massive whale we just caught? Yum! Eats it completely over a night and doesn't get fat or sick. So, my tiny little character was always hungry and had a magic item with infinite food storage. The amount of money she spent on food was ridiculous, which was her clothes. Some magical clothes made out of elemental fire bound to her soul. So every time we were talking or someone was fighting or other shit, my character was just eating something. Sometimes crackers, which were loud on purpose. For example, bad stealth roll? Perfect! I eat a cracker extremely loudly to roleplay it in. She also was buyable by food. Like, you want the magic item? Give me food! I made this after watching Penguins of Madagascar, where Skipper just crunches on the snacks. And I found it so funny, I had to make something themed on that. I'm playing an autognome in a Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign. Those are rare. Using the Lost Things plot hook, he had his ability to distinguish humanoids stolen from him. Now, he thinks all humanoids are gnomes. Of course, he can distinguish individuals from one another, and he can accurately identify physical traits. He just thinks they're the traits of a gnome. Bugbear, tall hairy gnome. Harengon, long-eared gnome. Bullywug, hoppy wet gnome. Ironically, two of the other three PCs are an autognome and a deep gnome. This is also a slight problem since it means 3/4 of the party is small, and the Balvorna, the hag, is a medium creature that can swallow anyone smaller than her. Campaign where the other languages were only used by their respective races. As an example, only gnomes knew gnomish, etc. Had a human who had a terrible stutter, but not in other languages. So he would try really hard to find non-humans to interact with so he could have a real conversation. Also influenced all his downtime so he would learn more languages. I just played in a one-shot as an Echo Knight that had a literal spoken echo whenever she talked. If it was a short sentence, I'd repeat the whole sentence. If it was a longer sentence or the session went on and I didn't want it to get annoying, I'd just echo the last word or two. The initial reaction of the rest of the table as they realized what I was doing was priceless. My sailor pirate Tempest Cleric carries around dried citrus peels in her rations and distributes one piece to each person during long rests. When we consume rations, of course. That way nobody gets scurvy. Is scurvy a real danger in this D&D module? Oh, of course not. My divination wizard is scared of most things, including sometimes her own shadow, but also can't sleep alone because the noises of a building shifting scare her. So, if the party is camping, totally fine. It's only when they go into town and stay at an inn that this problem rears its head. She'll still fireball an enemy to death, but she'll be cowering and crying the whole time. Dampfear Cleric whose father left his mother to buy some milk. Wanted cigarettes too, but never came back, so his mother sent him to church and forced him to become a cleric when really, he wanted to become a bard and travel the world. Though he's a prominent clergyman in one town, he's also a part-time entertainer in another. He's calm and collected in one, wild and free in the other. As a side note, my DM has me and everyone else sing for any song, roleplay, or inspiration dice caused. And for some reason, everyone's character has the ability to play an instrument. Hey there everybody, Brian Von Via, your favorite narrator from this side of Ohio, checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know down in the comments below. What are your favorite quirks that you've given to your characters or NPCs or anybody? We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy out there. We'll see you next time. Toodaloo for now.